Hello, everyone, and welcome to Striking Movie Podcast. I'm Val.
And I'm Patrick.
Patrick, I'm in Canada.
You're in Canada. Why?
I'm here for work. So there is a Calgary Fan Expo, and they have
Oh,
good guests. Like Brendan Fraser is somewhere in the vicinity,
wow.
and I'm super excited. Also, John Cleese is here somewhere. So,
Cool.
like,
I
yeah.
didn't even know you were out of town.
Nice. I caught that. I
Yeah.
caught that. But yeah, so we are now an international show, just
Exciting.
just like that. So, but I'm super excited. This we're kind of putting like 2 weeks of movies in this one little
We are.
podcast, which is super fun. The first one that I want to jump off with is this tomorrow is Earth Day. Tomorrow or Saturday, right? Is Earth Day.
Yes.
And Disney always does an Earth Day movie, which I happen to love, and I didn't know that you don't love these.
Um so don't I like I love the trailers for them. I love the concept. Um it all comes down to, first of all, I forgot that I had the screener of this one. I've had so much I've been cramming for this
Yes.
week. But what it comes down to is, when I was a kid, my older brother was hugely into the animal, true life, true nature documentaries, and they would go darker. Actually, Disney would go darker with them in the older days.
Yeah, the Animal Kingdom stuff. I
Yeah,
mean, it was really like National Geographic, show you like the true circle of life stuff.
exactly. And I just never, the idea of photographing animals and they were getting hurt or hurting each other and nobody was stepping in. As a kid, that really just, I could not handle that. Um and it was, and even chimpanzee, I really liked that one, but I took my niece and nephew to see that one, and it's like, and now the chimpanzees are finding a source of food, monkeys. They're going to kill and eat the monkeys, and it's just like, I this is more than I mean, they were very tasteful about it. They're so the documentaries are good. I just have a weak equilibrium when it comes to seeing animals get hurt or doing things that aren't cute and happy. I,
Yeah, I mean, I don't think that you're alone in that. I am so happy that Disney Plus has National Geographic on there because I watch so much National Geographic and I love documentaries and I love documentaries about nature and that but that is a sad part of it is that you do kind of have to understand that in nature, nature takes its course and
absolutely.
the things that we think are cute and fuzzy also have to eat sometimes other things that are cute and fuzzy. And but what I liked about Polar Bear, and that's the new one that comes
Mhm.
out on Disney Plus tomorrow, is that it does a lot of insinuating. What the sad parts about the movie are is that you're seeing these polar bears lose their homes. It's more
Yeah.
about the fact that our world is dying
Mhm.
and less about them. Like, yes, it shows that they have to try and find food, but it's like every animal that's there is trying to find food and they're finding food in places they never would have ventured before. They never would have messed with these other animals before if they had the earth that they know and love around them. Basically, the ice caps, right? They're melting.
Absolutely, and quite honestly, that's the other reason why I got the screener. And I'm like, polar bears. I love polar bears, but I don't. I'm not ready to process, because I know what's going on there and what's happening to the polar bears. And it was just like I kept putting off watching it till I was in the zone to
I
deal with
don't
that.
know that we're ever in the zone, but I get you.
No.
Like, I get that you have to be mentally prepared for reality and what's going on. And I
Uh-huh.
think Disney has done a really great job up to this point, kind of easing us into that reality. But honestly, I've been watching so many nature documentaries lately. It's just been like on my radar. That I feel like we're past the point where we have to ease into it. You know what I mean? Like,
Agreed.
if Leonardo DiCaprio has taught us nothing, it's that if you don't hold on, you're gonna die. And he has a lot of documentaries about the
Right.
world and what we need to do. I've actually put together my top 20 list of nature movies and films about the earth, that I will be posting on our Facebook page so that you can kind of see what I've been watching over the last couple of weeks. There's another great one before I go more into polar bears called Jane, and it's the Jane Goodall story. There's a few
Yes.
documentaries about her, but this one specifically called Jane actually uses all the footage of when she was in her 20s and she first went to Africa to live with chimpanzees, and nobody had ever done that before. Nobody had videoed or photographed any of this before. And she was nobody. She was a waitress. She saved up all of her money as a waitress because she couldn't afford to go to school so that she could do this. And now it's the longest running research for animals in the entire world. Um, and yeah, they show you, she has one of these moments that you said, Patrick, in this movie where in this documentary, that she's like, I had to step in. One of the chimps that she had seen
Uh-huh.
grow old had polio, and
Mm.
he was suffering, and she's like, we had to shoot him. They don't show that part of it, but the
Yeah,
fact
right.
they do the question like, well, why would you step in at this moment? And she's like, just like any other human, if I see an animal suffering,
Mhm.
like, I want to help. And they did vaccinate the rest of the chimps so that this wasn't an issue. um, but there is that question, like, when do we step in, when do we not step in? We need to do research, we need to learn, we need to help these animals keep their area. What do we do? So with polar bear, um, this one is, it says we should be doing stuff already to be
Mhm.
helping them, and there's a
Oh,
way to
definitely.
step in and help. But this is the thing about this movie, it's so beautiful. Disney does such a great job with, yes, we're going to give you this story about how you need to be helping the planet, how these animals are need us, but also look at this beautiful surrounding. Like, it's just breathtaking, the white on white on white. But there's this moment where the camera jumps up and it does a downward angle into this vast ocean where there should be ice for these polar bears to be swimming to so they can eat, but it's just these two little bears, white specks, swimming through the water. And it just gives you such a perspective um, on everything. And yes, there are some fun moments, and there's some
Oh,
great
yeah.
moments, but then there's also just reality that we all need to
Mhm.
know. And I do think that this one is very family friendly, where there are some, I would say, like, hold off if you're at a certain age, but you definitely want to watch it with your kids so that you can have these discussions. That's what they're made for. And I actually give this one an A. I think they balanced really well between trying to tell a story that needs to be told, trying to give us, you know, the urgency, without it's not political. This is our environment, right? It's not
Right.
about politics, it's about where we live and
Um,
the responsibilities that we have as humans, and what we've basically done to this planet, and that's why these animals are suffering. But also for us to really just respect what this animal is and how long it's been there, and what, this it's a mother who takes care of, her bears, her babies, and then what happens once they have to separate, because that's also nature's. They don't live together forever,
right.
and so it's just a really great story, and I love it because there's always a narrator, and the narrator for this movie is Catherine Kinnear, and I love Catherine
Oh,
Kinnear. Her voice is just so perfect for something like this.
she is great, and I agree that it's an issue like this. It definitely gets politicized, but it's not. It's not politics. It's just reality. And the thing about it is that it's the polar bears today, but it's going to be more than the polar bears that this is happening to in the future. And that's not a political agenda. That's just science and fact that we need. to be aware of.
Yeah. So that's my grade. That's my A. You can see it on Disney Plus starting tomorrow. And again, I do recommend doing that. And they have everything there on Disney Plus. They have like a whole section of nature, the Disney nature, but then they also have, the other channels on there with other movies. And I'll put the top 20 list up probably tomorrow. So look for that on our Facebook page tomorrow so that you can see. And these aren't just Disney movies that are on my list. I've been watching the Barack Obama National Parks series, which is amazingly beautiful. But again, Disney Plus, you can also see, like you said, Chimpanzee is
Right.
on there, and a bunch of others that they have put out that I totally love. The next, we're gonna stick to nature, but we're gonna get super bloody. We're gonna talk about the Northman.
Yes, which is segue from polar bears into Northman. Same sort of milieu, I suppose. So The Northman is the latest film from Robert Eggers, who gave us The Witch and The Lighthouse. But this is his attempt to expand into a bigger budget, a little bit more Hollywood style epic. It's a $70 million budget, which by today's standards is not huge, but for an art house director, it's a big step.
I mean, you're
forward.
swimming in the money at that point. Yeah.
And his goal was to set out to make the ultimate Viking film, is what he said. And I believe he basically has succeeded at doing that. The story is about the main character, Prince Amleth, played by, trying to remember which Skarsgård, Alexander, who is doing an uncanny impersonation of his dad, Stellan Skarsgård. I mean, he sounds exactly like him. But an interesting. So this story, I mean, it's a story about Prince Amleth. His father is murdered by his uncle, who then steals away with his mother, and then he wants vengeance. The legend of Prince Amleth was actually one of the inspirations for Hamlet. So it's a very old story.
And there's a bit of that in there. Like, I didn't read up on this before I went and saw it. I knew what it was, but I didn't want to know where he was going with it, because his movies that you just listed are vastly different in storytelling, but similar styles.
Right.
And then when I'm going along with it, I'm thinking, this feels a little bit like Hamlet. And then there are some parts that you're like, yeah, that's what he was going for.
Yes.
Smack you across the face with that one.
Yes. There's no no missing that little Oedipal touch there. So for me, The Northman was, from a technical visual standpoint, I have no trouble calling it an amazing achievement. It's a terrifically made film. The staging is incredible. The cinematography is great. I found myself having a very hard time getting invested in the story. What this movie made me realize is that the days of my 20s when I saw Braveheart and Gladiator in the theaters 10 times each are far behind me. I am not, my tastes have evolved. My tolerance for toxic masculinity is greatly diminished. And I feel like, it was interesting. Some people at the screening were complaining that the movie was a little bit too out there and they wanted something a bit more traditional. I actually wanted something that pushed it further and explored, I guess, honestly, I wanted a little bit of a, I'm hesitant to say the Unforgiven of Viking movies, but I would have liked a little bit more. They flirt with dealing with the consequences of violence and what it does to you, but they never really, they'll
Yeah.
toss out these ideas, but ultimately it still becomes, whether you see Amleth as a hero or a villain, it's still about psyching you up to watch the creative ways he's going to strike down his enemies. And it's exquisitely made, but I was not particularly invested in the story. And by the end, the violence reached a point where there was a specific sequence. I'm not going to describe it in detail because it was pretty graphic, but I felt like, okay, now it's just becoming machete kicks ice. It's getting
Well,
too
and
much.
I think that was important. That's what, so for me, it was, I don't love gore and blood on screen, but when it has a purpose, I applaud it. And for me, this definitely is not my favorite movie of the year, because I do think it was a little too long. But and I ended up looking at my husband for most of the movie because if I knew it was going to be super like gory, I'm like looking at him, give me the nod when it's okay for me to look over.
Uh-huh.
But I love the fact that they did not glorify Vikings. Because usually when we see a Viking movie like that's traditional, people say,
Uh-huh.
which is kind of silly in my mind, um, it it's because we have Disneyfied the Viking story, right?
Uh-huh.
We have made it romantic. We have glorified it into this thing that it should be heroic. And this is thing, one person's hero is another person's villain and vice versa every day. And when
Uh-huh.
you add a war, which is Vikings were constantly at war, that's what their main purpose was to take over. Is
Right.
all you're doing is killing every single day, taking over every day, and finding the happy medium to tell the story that maybe one Viking family or one Viking clan is less violent than another Viking clan, and which one do you think is better? Is that's the question they're throwing at us. But I think it was like historically violent in a
Mm.
way that I you're supposed to feel uncomfortable because Vikings were not nice, like
Okay.
that's what they did. And so for me, I was like, okay, I like that you didn't make me love these characters to the end. You think that you're following the hero, and then you realize, oh, wait a second. Like,
Uh-huh.
maybe we shouldn't be cheering for this guy.
Mm.
And I liked that. I did like that.
I agree with what you said. For me, they tried to play both sides of it. They
Mhm.
tried to have an element of that, but they also want they still wanted an element of that, having fun with the bloodlust and
Yeah.
and eating that up, and that was where it just didn't quite connect with me. I liked that they were unflinching in the portrayal of that, but I still felt like every time it felt like they were going to really go somewhere thoughtful. It was, or we could have another creative killer.
Yeah, they
And
kept on pulling us along with there's going to be an underlying story that you get this aha moment at
uh-huh.
some point, but you would go and then you're like, okay, here it's going to come right here, and then it never gets there. So for me, I'm like you, like, if they all died at the end, I would have been fine with it because I didn't care about
Uh-huh.
any of them. But I also think if they would have all died at the end, that would have been a perfect ending as well, because that's pretty much the answer to violence. At
Uh-huh.
some point, you're all going to be dead because nobody's
Yeah.
figuring out how, to actually get along together. And
I
it
actually think if they had all died at the end, that would have raised the movie up a level
yeah, I
for me.
really do. Because at this point, like, I walked out of the movie and I was like, other than the guts and gore, that was necessary and needed. It
Uh,
was a beautifully shot film, right?
uh,
And then when you add in the violence, it was like, I respect what he was doing and trying to say. It's just not my cup of tea,
yeah.
right? I can't watch that
Right.
over and over and over.
And,
Um,
and again,
but
I would say
I didn't hate it,
neither did I. I
but I
will
didn't
say
love
that
it.
I think the violence was needed. I feel that there were moments where they still embellished the guts and gore for, I
And
hate
I
to say
think
fun's sake, but I think that there were moments where they were going for, they did want the crowd that's, ooh. I
Well, and I
love
think
that, but I
that's
hate it.
also the director because The
Yes.
Lighthouse, there were moments in there where he just wanted to shock us.
Uh-huh.
So I think that's kind of like his signature is he kind of wants to push you past your comfort point.
Uh-huh.
And then you actually know, okay, that's too much for me, but at least you know that that's about you. But again, he is a filmmaker that he really does make us question these things that we wouldn't normally think about in the movies that he makes. And so I respect him as a filmmaker that way. For me, this movie was a B minus.
Uh-huh.
I respect what it was. I probably won't watch it again for a
Uh-huh.
really long time. I almost accidentally watched it on Tuesday night because I thought I was going to see the next movie we were talking about.
I
Um,
considered going to see it a second time to try and digest it, and ultimately
yeah,
was just too busy and couldn't quite stomach it. But I did.
yeah,
I there's a lot I respect about the film. I give it 2.5 stars out of 4. I think it's exquisitely made. It just didn't quite connect with me, and I'm weary of the minds. There's long been a mindset basically that old school up close and personal warfare is brutal and violent and horrible, but it sure is fun to watch if the popcorn holds out. And there was just a little bit too much of that feel for it.
yeah. And a lot of people
To me.
said it felt a little bit like the Green Knight in the mystic part of it, and the visual part of it. So if you're into that, then maybe this is something you're going to want to see. It is in theaters now, so you can go see it all you want. There's our grades. Up next, a Nicolas Cage movie about Nicolas Cage being
Yes.
Nicolas Cage.
So the long anticipated, the unbearable weight of massive talent opens tomorrow, and for me, one of my favorite movies of last year was Pig. It was
Yes.
it was the return of Nicolas Cage, the actor, and something really to be celebrated. Unbearable weight of natural talent, excuse me, of massive talent is the return of Nicolas Cage, the movie star. Uh, it's a light, fun action comedy about Nicolas Cage playing him a fictionalized version of himself. He was careful to set some boundaries of what he wanted to change about the character, particularly in that he wanted the character is portrayed as having a daughter that he has a strained relationship with because he did not want it to in any way mirror his relationship with his real life sons because he didn't want to put them through that or imply
Yeah.
that
Which I
he
love. That was super smart.
I do too. I really respect that as opposed to um I watch Space Jam: A New Legacy, and I think they've changed the name, but LeBron's real son is still going to get people coming up to him saying, "Oh, you're the kid from Space Jam," and they made this so different from Cage's real life that it kind of spared his kids that. But so what happens? He misses out on getting a role that he's up for that he really wants, and he gets despondent and decides to quit acting. But the reality is, he still has these debts to pay off, and his agent, played by Neil Patrick Harris, calls up and says, "Hey, I've got you a gig, $1 million to appear at this rich guy's birthday party uh, for the weekend," and he reluctantly goes along with it. It's
Which actors and performers and entertainers get asked to do this stuff all the time. So this is not like something out of the ordinary, but some do it and some don't.
exactly. It definitely does happen, and he's loath to do it, but he agrees to do it because of his debts. So he goes to the island of Mallorca and meets Javi, this eccentric billionaire played by Pedro Pascal, the Mandalorian.
AKA Burt Reynolds. It
Yes,
looks like Burt Reynolds in this movie a little bit, right?
a little bit. I guess I was thinking more Inigo Montoya.
Well,
Uh,
if Burt Reynolds and Inigo Montoya had a baby, it would be Pedro Pascal in this movie. How about that?
I'm gonna choose not to think about that. Uh, but anyway, so they bond and have a great time together, and then Nick is recruited by some CIA agents who say
Of course.
Javi might be a very bad guy. So then it becomes this comedy action thriller. It's a silly movie. It's not the thing of my worry in terms of how this is going to go over with audiences is this is the kind of movie that has been talked about so much and gotten so much hype that it's easy to fall in love with this movie before you've even seen it.
Right.
So you need to go into it to see it for what it is, not.
It's just fun, right?
Yeah,
It's just fun.
exactly. It's just a fun light comedy. Don't try to tack on what you want it to be. It's easy to want to see an element of, between him playing himself and the fact that there are two Nick Cages in this. There's Nicolas Cage and then Nicky Cage, the younger version of himself, that is basically his imaginary friend that he talks to. It's easy to want an element of adaptation or being John Malkovich. This is not that movie. It's just a straightforward, wacky comedy. But Cage is so good, has so much of that old charisma that he can still really carry a movie. The script is witty. It's very funny. Pascal is hilarious as always. It's a really solid piece of entertainment. I had a blast with it. I'm all for a big Nicolas Cage renaissance. He's out of debt now, and he's back and ready to play, and I can't wait for more of it. I gave this one 3.5 stars out of 4.
Wow. Okay. Okay. Well, I'm sad I didn't get to see it because I went to the wrong screening. But I will be seeing it as soon as I get back in the States. And so yeah, I'm super excited, Nick Cage. The next one is the big one that opened last weekend that we didn't have a chance to talk about, and that is the new Fantastic Beast movie. And there's some I try not to read any of like the fan stuff until after I've seen the movie because I have not read any of these books, but I've seen all the movies, right? And of course, when you have a fandom like this,
I'm sorry. I sensed that just as we were talking, Ezra Miller just got arrested again.
stop it. um, I feel like you're always going to get grumble, grumble, grumble. It's kind of like in the Star Wars universe of
Oh,
you didn't do
absolutely.
what I thought you were going to do, what I want you to do, what in my heart was supposed to happen. And I just went into the movie because I was like, I hope this is magical. Like that's just, I hope it's a good movie. I really liked the first Fantastic Beast movie. The second one was a little messy for me, but let's jump into the new Fantastic Beast movie.
So, Fantastic Beasts,
The Secrets of
the Secrets
Dumbledore.
of Dumbledore, really, in some ways, it plays like a bit of a course correction for the second film, which was just cramming too much into one movie. This one still does that, but it's a little less lopsided and frenetic about it. In many ways, this one plays like Dumbledore's 11. It's a bit of a heist movie, but it also delves. For me, the strongest aspect of the film is the way it delves deeper in than we've ever seen before into the relationship of between Dumbledore and Gellert Grindelwald, into their past. And for those, there's a crowd that really doesn't, that has tried to ignore that element since J.K. Rowling first revealed it, and they either have to just ignore this movie or accept that it's out there now. It definitely
Yeah.
spells out from the first scene. Yes, they had a relationship as teenagers. Yes, Dumbledore was in
They
love.
had a romantic relationship.
Yes.
Yeah.
It spells that out in no uncertain terms. And Mads Mikkelsen, for me,
Oh my gosh.
forget. We don't want to talk about any of the scandal or the reasons behind.
We'll touch on it. Yeah, I mean, there's some drama, obviously. Let's be real. There's some drama because Johnny Depp wasn't
Uh-huh.
originally in this role,
Right.
but because of some personal things between
Uh-huh.
him and Amber Heard, he was taken out of the role. And I was sad that he was taken out of the role under those circumstances. However, I think Mads Mikkelsen is
It's who
this role. This is
he's who should
him.
have been.
Yeah.
He should have been cast in the first place from the moment
Yeah.
he
Yeah.
was.
I love Johnny Depp all day long.
I do
Um,
not.
I do.
So
So
do
we differ on
a
these.
lot.
I love him as an actor. I think he's fantastic. But I think that this is Mad's role 100% front to back. Is I mean, I'm a huge fan of Mads Mikkelsen,
Oh, he's
but
great.
but when I saw him on screen as I believed it so much. Like
Uh-huh.
I felt like I was jumping into these characters where I feel like when Johnny Depp played it, I didn't care that much about Grindelwald. It just wasn't him. It wasn't meant for him.
It wasn't meant for him. It made it one of the problems with Crimes of Grindelwald was that no matter how he tried to play the character, albeit with all of the indulgences and flourishes that come with
Yeah,
being
it
Johnny
was.
Depp performance,
Yeah,
it made that one was the first and the third one are Fantastic Beasts movies. The
yeah.
second one was the new Johnny Depp movie, and that's going to happen with anytime you put somebody who's got that big a persona into a
Mhm.
franchise movie and put them
And I've seen
that.
him lately like melt into a picture where you don't see Johnny Depp, but I think in
Really,
that movie, yeah, but I think
I've
in
never seen it.
I will put together a list of
No,
the 3 movies I've watched over the past year, but,
I've never
um
seen it in his entire career.
yeah,
But
but I feel like, yeah, he had a movie last year where I was very surprised that he wasn't character acting, he was just playing the part. But I do think that he was overindulgent in that second movie,
uh-huh.
and I didn't really care about the character. And so
Right.
with this movie, immediately Mads brought something to this character that was believable. That even though he was the villain
Uh-huh.
of the movie, depending on what side you're on, and
Right.
that's always what the question is in a Harry Potter film, right? This
Yeah.
is that universe, is that there are villains, but some people want to be on that side, and that's where they feel
Mhm.
comfortable. And all right, and then you have his relationship, which I wasn't sure how much they were going to touch on it, and I was so happy that they just put it out there. It was just a natural thing. It wasn't they had to stop and talk about it. It was just I'm meeting, I Dumbledore
Yeah.
am meeting with Gridwall at a restaurant, and we're talking about our past relationship, and we're trying, it
Yeah.
it was a very heartfelt, real moment for me that I feel like most of us have had where we've met an ex and
Mhm.
tried to have a conversation about something that's uncomfortable.
Yeah.
And Jude Law, I have to say, he's hit and miss for me. I there are things that I love him in, and then there are things that I just don't love. And this for me probably is his best performance in a really long time.
For me, as somebody who, I mean, I really love these books. I just was, I read these books in the first four in a period of about a month in the summer of 2000, and I've just been a huge fan since then. We won't get into the other scandals that have kind of diminished that for me.
Yeah.
I still, uh, anyway, the point of that is I was never entirely satisfied with the portrayals of Dumbledore in the films until Jude Law came around. For me, Jude Law is everything that Albus Dumbledore is, and he just embodies that character. The fact he is able to disappear into that role in a way that just is beautiful to me, and he just adds so much dignity, so many layers, and the sadness of the character that we never saw before. I just think he's fantastic. If I have a complaint with the film, so because at the first movie I really enjoyed that one. I love the character of Newt Scamander. I find that a lot of fans weren't too big on Catherine Waterston's character, Tina Goldstein, but I loved her.
Yeah.
The Goldstein sisters. And Tina has been reduced to a cameo in this one. Jacob and Queenie are still in it, but I felt like they had a hard time juggling the characters and deciding whether Newt was the lead or whether Dumbledore was the lead. All in all, this movie, so the plan has been to make five Fantastic Beasts movies. They dropped off in grosses since the third one. This one has dropped off even more so, and with a lot of different factors, you can tell what this movie plays like to me is when you're watching a TV series and you have a season finale and they're like, we may or may not get renewed for next season. So we're going to wrap it up enough that if we get canceled, we can end it here, but we really hope to do more. That's what this movie played like. And I personally believe that this is going to be the last Fantastic Beasts movie. It's not obviously going to be the last of the Wizarding World franchise.
Right. Yeah, I definitely see something else coming, but for me, this was tied up.
It doesn't fully tie up the Dumbledore Grindelwald story. Those who know the mythology, there's some big stuff that we still need to see there that I hope gets resolved, but it does tie that up. For me, as a fan, I really enjoyed the movie with reservations. It still was a little bit jumbled. I wasn't entirely satisfied with the way some things were resolved. I also give this one 2.5 out of 4 stars. I really enjoyed it, but it's not a great film. It's definitely for fans. It's what I describe, especially the last two Fantastic Beasts films, as not Muggle friendly. If you those who go into these movies expecting to really appreciate and understand them without some introduction into the world already, if this is your attempt to get introduced to the world of Harry Potter and the Wizarding World, it's not the way it just throws you right off into the
Yeah, for me, again, I'm not as invested book-wise in these stories. Again, I've read one chapter of the first Harry Potter book, and that is it. My whole experience with the Wizard World is through these movies, and for me, I thought this movie brought the heart back to this franchise. There was so much heart, and I feel like it was an ensemble cast, like you said, kind of, like Dumbledore's 11, because the ensemble cast behind, these characters were so intriguing. I cared about almost all of them, and the actors just were fantastic. And again, Jude Law and Mads Mikkelsen were great, and I loved the new creatures that were brought to us. Eddie Redmayne is so fun. I thought Ezra's character, Credence, I thought this was such a better understanding of his character for me than it was in the last movie. I mean, I'm glad I saw the second movie so that I could understand some things that they don't touch on in this one. But I definitely think he was given, he gave a better performance because he was given a better script. He was given better support. And I love Dan Fogler. To me, his comedy is so right on. And
he's one of my favorite aspects of films.
Yeah, he's so accessible to audiences that brings you in. Jessica Williams.
As you alluded to, she was great.
Yeah, she was fantastic. Just so many great people in this movie, but again, I thought it brought some heart back, and I give it a solid B. I would watch this movie again. And
I'm definitely going to see it again.
yeah, I again, it's not going to be the best movie of the year, but for
No.
me, I thought it was solid. I thought it's something the franchise should be proud of, and I definitely hope that fans get out to see it because I definitely would love to see more of all of those characters, maybe in different stories, because they did present us some characters that I would like to know some more backstories of.
Yeah,
Some of that
me too.
supporting cast.
Agreed. And I loved what they did with the actor who played Dumbledore's brother Aberforth, who's one of
Yes.
my favorite characters from the books, and was played by Kieran Hines in the last Harry Potter film. Is just so dead on, and the relationship between the backstory of Dumbledore's family is so rich and brilliant in the books that it was a delight to me to get to see some of that.
Well, what are you going to get out and see this weekend? We want to know. Go ahead and comment below. You can also get a hold of us on our Facebook page and let us know what you thought of the movies, but we definitely want to know your thoughts. Maybe you agree with us. Maybe you totally disagree with all of our grades today and ratings of these films. Either way, please follow us on Facebook. Please subscribe to our YouTube channel.
Yes, subscribe to the YouTube channel.
And we'll be back next week. Anything you looking forward to, Patrick?
Next week is pretty sparse in terms of big releases. We have the latest generic Liam Neeson movie, and that's about it. But we do have a couple of big series
Yes.
coming out, including Under the Banner of Heaven, which takes place here in Utah. It's about a real life rather grisly murder that happened in Utah. And later today, I will be interviewing Andrew Garfield and Dustin Lance Black about that film.
And we'll be posting the interviews for you as soon as we can put that up. So next week we'll probably be covering some streaming movies and series. Which I mean, there's some good stuff out there, and maybe hit some stuff that we missed over the past couple of weeks. Sometimes there's a slow week in movies, but there's plenty of big weeks coming up. Oh, and I want to remind everybody, if you haven't seen The Batman, you can now see that on HBO Max. Thanks, everybody. We will see you next week.
Thank you.